And good morning. I'm your friend Scotty Ray. It is Tuesday already. Chilly outside as we wake up to a morning of 30 degrees. We're going to get to in the 50s today. Woo, woo, woo. We'll tell you about the extremely cold nights that are coming up, and we've got a bunch of them. We even have a chance of snow and ice in the northern part of the state. It's not going to reach here, but it is a chance in the northern portion up north around Columbus, northward to the state line. We'll tell you all about that here in a few moments. Plus, we got a special guest this morning. We'll have Senator Jeff Tate joining us in just a moment. Let's go to Collinsville now. Let's get a good word from the good Lord above.
I'm sure your kids, if you have them, are the same way as mine when they get in trouble. They always want to shift the blame to their sibling or to another child who is doing worse than them. You know, they seem to think that, hey, if I prove that this other person did something even worse than I did, it just makes my offense disappear. And usually the person they put the blame on was the leader who made them do wrong. But at the end of the day, even if we were just connected to the issue or to the sin or to the wrongdoing, we're still accountable. Look at what Proverbs 29:24 says. To be a thief's partner is to hate oneself. He hears the curse but will not testify. Wow, that's a pretty strong indictment. For us to involve ourselves with wrongdoing, even if we aren't the main one, is essentially to hate ourselves by positioning us to failure and trouble by connection. This is why who we surround ourselves with matters so much. Yeah, I remember even as a fifth grader, I wasn't saved, by the way, but I was so impressionable. And I was around a lot of kids at recess that were doing some things that the teacher had asked us not to do. We were using language that we definitely shouldn't use. And because of that, I found myself in trouble, and I found myself blaming them. They made me do it. I followed them, but when I sat before, he said, no, you did it. And he was right. And so for you and for me, I just want to encourage us not to get roped in to other people's schemes if they're wrong, but to stand on truth and to stand on what is right, no matter what. Change begins in you.
The Change Begins in You is brought to you in part by Piggly Wiggly of Collinsville, Patrick Allen Companies, Mitchell Tire and Wrecker in Collinsville, and Mowdy Cabinetry. And good morning. Welcome back. As we begin this day, as I mentioned, we had a special guest. It looks like we're going to have several special guests in a little bit. I think Odie's going to be out. Greg is making his way in this morning. As we have so many things that go on in Jackson that we don't always keep up with a day-to-day, we've got the man who can explain what goes on, Senator Jeff Tate. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. How we doing?
Man, I am good. What have y'all been doing over the last few months in Jackson?
So this is week 6, week 7, something like that, and this is kind of a pivoting point in the legislative process. We've had bills written on each side of the Capitol, House and Senate. Over these last 6 weeks, they've made their ways to committees. The chairman of each committee has decided what's worth bringing forward, what's not. And then this past week, we spent every day voting on the floor of those bills. And so that was for our general bills. We still have a few more bills that are pending. But for 90+% of our bills, we've passed them out of the Senate or passed them out of the House. And now this is where each of those bills flips, and they will be assigned committees in the other chamber. And those chairmen will decide, hey, which bills do we want to pass as is? Which do we want to amend? Which do we want to kill? And then from there, they'll go back to the floor of either the House or the Senate, and we'll see how the chamber votes on it.
So what you're telling me is very complicated.
It's a lot of hurdles. There's 4,000 bills that'll be drafted any given session, and that'll be funneled down into about 200 bills that'll actually become law, 200 to 300 bills that'll actually become law. So
that's a heap.
That's the process. Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
So let's get to the big question on this, because it's been brought up a lot. Sales tax, income tax. Where are we on this? Is this going to pass what has been brought forth to y'all?
So that bill is a bill that did not have the deadline of last week. So we still have another week or two until a bill like that has to be passed. The House has already passed their version of what they want to do with income tax. And I want to call it a tax on work. When you say it that way, it
tax on work.
Tax on work. It takes on a different meaning when you say it that way. When you hear income tax, you think, oh, most wealthy. And thanks for these Mardi Gras beads, by the way. I don't know what all you did to get those, and I'm not going to ask. But when you say we're going to tax work, shouldn't that be the first place that we eliminate? The first place
I
that
would
we
think.
lower? That's what I think. I mean, we have to pay tax on our groceries, on our toys, on our vehicles, on our gasoline, on all these different things we have to pay tax on. If there's one place that we could just say, hey, we're going to reduce or eliminate, I think the tax on our work should be first. And I know that there's a lot of people that may want to comment and say, what about our property tax? We have nothing to do with the property tax. That is a local issue. That is with municipalities and counties. So talk to them about that.
I'd be the first, wouldn't I?
Yeah. No, I wouldn't think that. But anyway, the House passed a version, and let me say this: I have been focused on our Senate bills because that's what we're voting on. Now's the time to refocus on the House bills. But to look at the headlines of the House bill, the appetite is in the legislature is to reduce that on work, on income. And what the House passed was a plan to eliminate the income tax over the course of several years. It was about 2036, 2037, where it would be phased out to complete elimination. Well, they had to come up with money somewhere to replace that to keep paying for everything that we do in the state. And so what they came up with was a 1.5% sales tax increase on all goods. Also a 5% increase on gasoline.
Yeah, that would hurt us.
Sam's right now is at $2.40, I believe.
Yeah.
5% on top of that's 12 cents a gallon, just to give you an idea of what that looks like. And
It'd be kind of major.
that would be a jump. But the governor has endorsed that. 5 of the statewide elected officials have endorsed that. A lot of people say that, look, a consumption tax is better than an income tax. That's the way they look at it. We can agree, disagree on it. I'm just telling you what they're saying. So the Senate leadership has come up with their own version of how to reduce income tax and yet somehow keep paying for everything that we do. And what they've come up with is from 4%, we were at 5% income tax, to get it down to a 3% income tax, lower the grocery tax by 2%. So whenever you go grocery shopping, instead of paying a full 7%, you'd pay 5%. And then over the course of 3 years, you would have a 3-cent per gallon gasoline tax increase.
So it goes back to gasoline again.
Goes back to gasoline. And look, I didn't craft this. I'm not the one that I wasn't asked, hey, put a formula together to reduce income tax, reduce grocery tax, yet somehow have enough revenue to keep paying for all the programs that we have.
So let me interrupt you there. Who did draft this? Who put this together?
This has come from leadership of the Senate. You have the lieutenant governor and that inner circle, if you will.
Okay.
And so this is a matter of, we really have to kind of math this thing out and see at the end of the day, does a Mississippian have more money in their pocket or less money in their pocket after we do this? And that'll determine, how the votes will go.
But all this fun is, if I'm looking at this right, as we were talking about work, those of you take people, loggers and people that distance and have to deliver products, that's going to raise everything and cut profit.
That's the thing.
levels.
It's not going to be the same for every person. It's going to be different. And for those that don't have income, reducing the income tax doesn't affect them.
No, not at all.
The grocery tax will affect everybody. It'll help everybody. There's no question
Correct.
about that. If there's one thing I've learned in that state legislature, it's unintended consequences when you pass something. I would rather just do nothing than do something and there be an unintended consequence. But those are the two plans that are out there that are going to be voted on. At the end of the day, when you look in the crystal ball of what we're going to actually pass, I think at the end of the day there will be some type of reduction in income tax, and I do believe there will be a reduction in the grocery tax. And I've voiced my concerns that, look, for 5 weeks, this was last week when they first proposed this to me. I said, look, for 5 weeks we've been up here and we haven't talked anything about a gasoline tax.
Well, and let me ask this, Jeff, the people that are delivering the groceries to the store, when we move this 3% from grocery tax to fuel, isn't it going to raise the groceries in the store?
That's the thing.
We haven't
That's the whole
saved
point.
anything.
That's the whole thing that you have to math out. And this is one thing about a bill. Whenever you have to explain it, it's not a good bill when you have to explain it and you have to math it out.
I think I go on this line of let's don't touch it. If we don't have a better plan, let's don't touch it, because I think this really and truly raises groceries in the end. And I know there's going to be some folks in Jackson that argue me down, but I know from the common person sitting here, and I spend a lot on gas. That Tahoe rolls every day in my business, and I know there's a lot of others that do that too. It's going to hurt, but that those trucks delivering this food will hike their prices, and I think we're back to square one.
That's where I'm going to math it out and hopefully be able to say that, hey, it lowers it. And if it doesn't, then at the end of the day, I want Mississippians to have more money in their pocket. That's what I want.
Do you see this passing the Senate? Do you see this becoming law in the end? What is your thoughts, or do you even have a guess at this point?
Well, again, I think at the end of the day, we will lower the grocery tax. That's been the main thing that we've been wanting to do, that we've been saying for 7 months now. That's what we want to do. Income tax is something that you want to eliminate. Again, you have a lot of services, a lot of projects that the state puts on. Where's that revenue going to come from? And I will say this, under the proposed plan, and again, I'm not endorsing this plan. I'm not saying that I'm for it or against it. I'm just simply stating that this is something that we're going to have to vote on, that gasoline tax would go strictly to bridges, roads, highways, that it would not go to the general fund for any type of pet project or anything like that.
Well, as a voter, I would say I'm not... I guess the best way, I'm not impressed. Is that a word for it?
Don't sound like we're getting rid of anything. We're just swapping.
Yeah, as Greg says, he looks as though we're swapping here, and you're in a a tide here.
And I talked to one of my colleagues, and this is what he says. He says, well, for the drug dealers out there, they're not paying any of their taxes right now. For the people that are just sitting at home, they're not paying any taxes right now. I'd rather everybody that drives have to pay the tax instead of only the working man. And then at the same time, we're going to lower the tax on the working man.
I see that.
And when you say it like that with some boldness, and that's what one of my colleagues a little bit south of my district says, it's like that makes sense, but you have to say it that way, because the fact
reality,
is,
it's in my groceries are still higher.
Well, it'll lower your groceries. It'll lower your groceries. I understand that there'll be the tax on the gasoline, but it'll lower your groceries whenever you take that 2% off. But that's what I have to vote on. You know what I mean? It's not what I wrote up. It's just what I have to vote on.
But as I always look at this, when we have something happen, especially with companies that do this, it may go up 2% here, but they're going to raise their prices 6%.
They're going to have their margins,
and then you're really upside down again. So, wow, it. But
hey, the House plan.
What does the general public think here?
House plan's been out there for nearly a month, and
floundered.
Haven't heard any negative about it. You know what I mean?
I don't think anybody knows about it.
Well, here I am. I mean, week one that we have it, I'm here to tell you. But now we've passed a lot of other good stuff in the Senate. Now again, we have not passed that. That's just proposed legislation. I'd like to talk about some things that we have actually passed.
All right, what good do we have?
All right, so last week I texted you and Odie. Y'all were talking about homeless.
All right.
We have a bill that passed through the Senate that is going to allow to give our local authorities more jurisdiction about going after these encampments, going after people that are just setting up shop on someone's land. Let's say there's a piece of land and the homeowner lives in Tennessee, Alabama, doesn't really care what's happening on this piece of property.
Right.
Doesn't matter. This gives the local authorities the jurisdiction to be able to say, hey, look, you don't own this land. You cannot live here. You have 48 hours to leave.
Well, we need that.
Within 48 hours, they will then be able to arrest those individuals. They'll be able to book them, process them. And here's the main thing. They'll be able to see, do they have a drug and alcohol problem? Are they criminals? Is there a warrant out for their arrest for something else? Do they need to be checked into East Mississippi? Something like that. So this will help give their jurisdiction to be able to clean up our streets, to be able to get the homeless off of these encampments.
Now, I agree with that 100%. We do need to do something. Our streets are being overtaken by this. And whether you're good-hearted or not, it's the facts. We're going to end up looking like L.A., and a lot of times we're already there. The streets downtown with what they do on the street corners that even I don't show because it's so disgusting. It happens here.
Yeah, well, I'll say this. I remember whenever the city of Meridian passed their ordinance of not being able to hand out money, food, whatever it may be at one of these intersections, I was like, good job. We're doing something good here in the city of Meridian. What this bill does is it addresses all the cities that have not passed an ordinance like that. And then it also addresses the city of Meridian to say, okay, you have this ordinance in place, but now we're going to have higher fines on the second and third offense. And it gets pretty hefty after the second and third offense as far as actual jail time, not just a fine. And I know that's hard to enforce, but this is giving the authority for the local arresting powers to be able to do something instead of it just being just a
and I'm glad you said that, because I can't tell you a sign is only worth what a sign is worth.
Right.
I know there are around town there's $1,000 littering fine now. Is it enforced? I'd like to know what the number of tickets for those that were out panhandling were actually given a ticket, because I've never seen it. I see them every day on the street corners begging, and people drive right by them.
From what I understand, the House has passed a similar bill, and usually when you have what we call companion bills like that'll usually pass. Another companion bill that both the Senate and House have passed, and I was glad to co-sponsor it, and you had it on your Facebook, DEI. We're abolishing those practices in our universities and colleges.
That's good.
That's for both scholarships and for hiring purposes. We're going strictly merit-based. We have 2 carve-outs. One is if you're a veteran, and that's a bill that I'd like to talk about before we go. Veterans and those that are disabled. So those are the carve-outs where we help give you a hand up. Past that, it's merit-based. Whether you, either you make the grades, you have the smarts, or you don't. It's not based on what gender you want to claim to be, what race you are, whatever sexual preference you have. In other words, it's merit-based. And so I'm glad that we passed it. I'm glad that the Senate, the House passed a version. I'm glad that, from what I understand, I have not seen this, but from what I was told from my colleagues, that Elon Musk sent out a memo saying to K through 12, DEI has to go or you will face losing federal funds. So that's good that they're addressing that in the K through 12 area.
A lot going on there. We'll be right back with Senator Jeff Tate. I couldn't find my button there. We'll be right back.
We welcome you to a new vehicle buying experience here at Doc's Toyota. Buying a new vehicle doesn't have to be stressful, but don't just take our word for it.
This was the best experience I've ever had buying a vehicle.
Doc's employees are top-notch.
I drove 2 hours, not once, but twice, to purchase 2 vehicles with a 5-month time frame.
Doc's delivers competitive pricing, a comprehensive selection, and flexible financing options, helping you get on the road from Carthage, Meridian, and beyond. There's a reason why there's no deal like a Doc's deal.
As the seasons change, so do your clothes, and Garrett Sport exactly what you need. Haybo shirts, long and short sleeve, also Hulk shirts, and America's favorite brand, Carhartt. Whether you need work pants or slacks for church, and nothing lasts like a pair of Carhartt overalls. Maybe it's a set of boots that you need to keep you dry in those wet conditions. And as hunting season rolls in, they have all the camouflage you need and toboggans to boot. Garrett Sports Center, 3505 8th Street, Meridian. Welcome back. I'm your friend Scotty Ray. Senator Jeff Tate in with us this morning explaining some bills that have been going through the Senate in Mississippi that they're getting ready to vote on that will eventually become law. Those usually go into law July of each year.
July 1, yes,
July
sir.
1.
Some go into law upon passage. That's what we said, like the last line tells you when it goes into effect. About 5% or less go upon passage, and the rest, most of them go in July 1 of that year.
So any other big stories that we need to touch on before you leave this morning?
Well,
with this?
I'm chairman of the Veteran and Military Affairs, and I want to talk about a couple bills that we passed through there. One is we have a bill that is going to actually provide scholarship funds to our combat veterans. And we talked about the DEI and not having any special treatment to anybody except for merit-based, and we had a carve-out for veterans. So right now, for a veteran, you have the Sonny Montgomery GI Bill, where if you serve, your college is paid for. You have 48 months that you can use that, and you have up to 10 years after you've left the service to be able to take advantage of that.
Right.
What I've heard from several veterans is that going from a combat zone to the classroom is a big transition, and they need more time
That makes sense.
to make that transition. And a lot of veterans feel pressured to go ahead and use those benefits, and they may not be attaining the information, the education like they should. What this bill will do, and we passed it unanimously out of committee and out of the Senate, is it's going to open up a grant program for combat veterans to be able to apply for. For every month that they were in a combat zone, they will get a month of free tuition.
Oh, that's good.
And as long as, they've exhausted all their GI benefits and there's no other federal funds for them to go after, this will make Mississippi one of only about a dozen states that provides veterans with extra college and university benefits. And so I'm proud that we were able to pass that. I hope that we get it out.
I
of the
agree with that
House.
one.
Yes, sir. And so I'm proud that we were able to do that. And again, we'll be one of just about a dozen that provide something beyond what the Montgomery GI Bill does.
Our veterans need to be taken care of, and I'm glad you're on that committee doing that. Now, let me ask this before you go. There's a lot of talk that you may be running for another office. Do we want to go there?
I don't know if we want to go there. I'll say this. At age 20, I ran for election commissioner. From 2009 to 2019, I conducted about 45 to 50 elections in Lauderdale County. Never had a challenged vote, never had a challenged election. I was proud to be able to bring paper ballots to Lauderdale County. Upon getting into the Senate, I was placed as chairman of the elections committee, was there for 3 years. I'm proud that, we mandated paper ballots in all 82 counties.
Right.
We mandated that no machines can have the capability of being hooked up to the internet. We banned ballot harvesting. We banned Zuckerbucks. We allowed for audits of elections. There's a lot of things with elections that I'm proud that we did, and if there's a place on down the road where I can help out with elections in Mississippi, I'd be willing to step up to the plate. That fair enough?
That's fair enough. We'll get more from this from Senator Jeff Tate as we see the hint there. Something more is coming. We're getting ready for the morning show. It'll be here in just a few moments. Remember, cold weather is coming as we look at this. This is what is expected. We're getting down to 19 and 20 for the remainder of the week through Friday. Y'all be very careful with this as we'll see ice and snow accumulation in the northern portions here from Columbus all the way due north to the state line at Tennessee. So be cautious with that snow there around Tunica and those areas there. And as we look at this is what our 7-day forecast comes out to be. Tomorrow night, 19. Thursday night, 18. This is going to be some frozen pipes is what we see coming. And when we get to Friday, we start warming back up at nighttime to 27.
Lord save the crawfish.
Ooh, I tell you. And, this is not even factoring in wind chills. This is regular degrees, so it's going to be cooler than that. We're sitting this morning at 30, which will be warm in comparison to that. We'll be back with the morning show in just a few moments. Senator Jeff Tate, thank you for coming in today.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me. Thank you.
We'll have a special guest coming up. Mississippi Treasurer. We'll find out all about that. David McRae is going to be joining us at the top of the hour along with Greg here at the Scotty Ray Report. We'll be right back.
The Scotty Ray Report is brought to you by our following partners.